Hello everyone, welcome back to the Frontline Report channel. Please subscribe and like my videos. Tonight, I bring you a dramatic story of how Ukraine launched a silent but deadly strike deep into Russian territory, hitting the supply lines that Moscow depends on to keep its war machine running. The story begins in the dark of night, when an operation carried out under the cloak of darkness changed the game. Imagine the quiet of a rear area rail yard, fuel tankers poised for movement, tracks leading into the heart of Russian logistic networks. Suddenly the night bursts open, explosions, fire, diesel igniting, ammunition detonating. Ukrainian Special Operations Forces and unmanned systems had plotted, planned, and executed a strike aimed not at the front lines, but at the arteries that feed them. The goal: to sever the supply lines, cripple the convoy routes, derail the logistics, and leave the enemy stranded. In this review, we'll examine the exterior of the target and the approach, then the interior of the supply facility and the hit, talk about performance of the strike, how effectively it worked, look at safety, considerations for Ukraine's operators and broader implications, unique selling point of this kind of operation, why it stands out, approximate price or cost/impact trade-off, and then a conclusion summarizing what it means moving forward. Exterior: from the aerial vantage, you see the vast yards of Russia's supply network, rail sidings, fuel tankers, logistics hubs, lighting towers, security fences. Ukraine watched for months, observed the movement of fuel trains, the timing of dispatches, the weak points in the chain. At night, the shadows lengthen, and the dark provides cover. The exterior appearance of the target zone is deceptively quiet. Ambient lights glow, rails gleam, yet the hum of movement gives way to the hush of slumber. Into this, the Ukrainian strike arrives. The first blast shatters windows, ripples across the compound. Fuel tankers erupt in fireballs visible miles away. The rail yard becomes a scene of chaos. In the exterior area, the destruction is obvious. Rails twisted, tankers overturned, infrastructure knocked out. The visuals are dramatic. Columns of flame, black smoke billowing into the night sky, emergency lighting flickering, residual explosions. For Russia, the exterior of the facility now carries the stigma of vulnerability. For Ukraine, it becomes a demonstration of reach. You can strike deep, you can damage key nodes, you can change the calculus. Interior: inside the logistics hub is the nerve center. Offices, dispatch rooms, fuel storage, maintenance halls, control rooms. The strike penetrates the interior indirectly via drones, sabotage teams, guided missiles to ignite fuel depots, sever communications, disable power supplies. The control room goes dark, computers shut down, fuel gauges freeze, trucks queued for departure find their lanes blocked or destroyed. The interior impact is swift but efficient, minimal personnel, maximum disruption. The power supply fails, alarms go off, and the facility's ability to coordinate movement is eliminated. What once was a functioning hub becomes a smoldering shell of chaos. The interior damage is less visible from outside, but its significance is profound. Logistic flows stop, dependencies are exposed, and the enemy is left scrambling in the dark. Performance: how effective was the operation? According to multiple sources, Ukrainian forces targeted a key supply node in Russian territory, a rail yard or fuel depot carrying fuel or lubricants destined for frontline units. The destruction of tankers, derailment of trains, and disruption of fuel flow shows high performance. The strike was deep inside Russia, showing reach beyond the border. The damage reported includes burning fuel depots and severed rail links. The performance metric here isn't just physical destruction, but the downstream effect. Russian forces faced logistic difficulty. The flow of ammunition, fuel, and supplies slowed or halted. The timing: night, under cover of darkness, added to the performance. The surprise element, the stealth, the accuracy, all combined to make the performance exceptional. One might compare this to a high-performance sports car rather than a basic logistic truck. The operation delivered strategic shock, not just tactical damage. Safety features: safety here concerns both the friendly force Ukraine and broader safety. of impact minimizing collateral damage, civilian casualties, blowback. For Ukraine, operating at night inside enemy rear zones involves high risk. Detection, interception, failure, casualties. But the operation appears to have taken advantage of drones, remote systems, precision strike weapons reducing direct human exposure. Using unmanned aerial vehicles or special operations, forces with remote entry means fewer boots on ground, fewer friendly losses. For civilians and infrastructure not intended as target, the planners appear to have selected a logistical hub rather than a civilian area, reducing unintended harm. For Russia, the disruption of supply lines carries its own safety risk. Without supplies, their units become vulnerable, and the instability may lead to unintended fire or explosions indeed. Large fuel fires carry environmental and civilian safety risks too. Overall, this kind of strike, when executed precisely and at night, shows a relatively high safety profile for the attacker Ukraine and targeted effect for the defender Russia. However, it also raises escalation risks. Hitting deep targets may provoke direct responses, increasing danger for all parties. Unique selling points. What makes this operation stand out? Several features. First, the depth of penetration striking inside Russia, not merely on the front lines. That sends a message of reach. Second, the logistical target supply lines are the arteries of war. To hit them is to attack the enemy's ability to fight, not just their fighters. Third, the night-timing darkness adds surprise and psychological impact. Fourth, the use of modern tactics, drones, long-range precision, intelligence, tracking movement of fuel and supplies. Fifth, the impact multiplier. By damaging supply lines you create downstream failures, trucks stop, ammo shipments delayed, fuel shortages, etc., which are cheaper to achieve than frontal assaults but potentially more strategic. Sixth, the psychological component. It signals vulnerability inside Russia's rear, affecting morale and forcing the adversary to divert resources to protect logistic nodes. These unique selling points make the operation more than just a strike. It becomes a strategic lever. Price cost/impact. While exact cost figures are rarely released, we can discuss trade-offs. The financial cost of drones, special equipment, intelligence, and planning is substantial but far less than large-scale bombing or frontal assaults. The opportunity cost. Choosing to attack logistic nodes rather than attacking front-line positions. The impact cost. Hitting supply lines can yield large leverage for relatively small investment. For Russia, the cost is high. Disrupted supply chains mean slower operations, increased vulnerability, possibly greater casualties or retreat. For Ukraine, executing such a strike costs resources and carries risk, but pays off in strategic terms. If we were to assign a price, metaphorically, the cost per ton of disruption is far lower than a conventional battle. The operation also forces Russia to invest more in protecting rear areas, thereby diverting resources from front-line operations and indirect cost. In short, the price is low to Ukraine relative to the strategic gains. For Russia, the cost is amplified. Conclusion. In conclusion, this nighttime, deep penetration strike by Ukraine on Russian supply lines represents a shift in how the war is being fought. No longer purely battles at the front line, this type of operation hits behind the scenes, attacking the infrastructure that keeps the war machine moving. The exterior devastation, burning fuel tanks, derailed trains, rail yards in flames, is vivid and symbolic. The interior disruption, communications down, supply flows halted, is strategic. The performance of the operation shows that Ukraine is evolving. Stealth, reach, precision, logistics, disruption. The safety profile is favorable for the attacker and targeted enough to minimize unintended harm, though risks remain. The unique selling points: depth, logistics focus, night timing, high strategic multiplier mark this as a model for future operations. The cost/impact ratio is favorable, and the message loud: Ukraine can strike deep, Russia's rear is no longer safe. For viewers, the takeaway is clear. Supply lines matter, logistic nodes become front lines, the night becomes a battlefield. If Russia cannot protect its supply infrastructure, its ability to sustain operations falters. If Ukraine can keep executing such strikes, the balance of power shifts. As always, stay informed, stay alert, and if you found this review insightful, please hit subscribe and like, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching.